As we continue to think about individual differences and how those differences may be useful as predictors of performance and behaviors in the workplace, we just came off our discussion of the big five personality dimensions. We're now going to talk about some of the other ways to conceptualize individual differences in people that have been found to have a strong prediction in successfully predicting organizational outcomes. One of them is affectivity. So generally speaking, there's been a fair amount of research that finds that most people, broadly speaking, either are positive or negative when it comes to affectivity. So affect is kind of your emotional state. So this is another way to potentially consider or conceptualize your neuroticism. So positive affectivity is the tendency to experience positive moods and feelings in a wide range of settings and under many different conditions. People with positive affectivity basically look at the bright side of life. They see the positive in situations. And this results in typically them being in more positive emotional states, typically having more positive feelings, and generally being more positive on anything that occurs within the workplace. Generally speaking, people with positive affectivity have a higher job satisfaction. Negative affectivity is the tendency to experience negative moods in a wide range of settings and under many different conditions. So again, this is someone that has a tendency to look at the bad side of any situation, to look for the negative in life. And it results typically in those people also having negative emotional states and also reacting negatively to many situations. Also, it's been found to be related to lower job satisfaction. Now, both positive affectivity and negative affectivity have been found to have at least a component that is a genetic component. So again, looking at twin studies, looking at the development of this particular construct of individual difference, we do find some evidence that people are predisposed to be either positive or negative in how they respond to the world. However, at the same time, that's not the whole picture. There's also that nurture component of if someone has experienced a lot of positives in their life, if they've experienced a very successful set of experiences as they've grown up and as they've developed, they're more likely to look at the world positively. And likewise, again, if they've experienced a lot of setbacks, a lot of negative events, they're more likely to look at the world negatively. But this is yet another construct that is often measured in organizations, specifically because it does give us some information about how someone's going to react on the job, react to situations in the job, and also how they're going to basically feel towards their job, higher or lower job satisfaction. Switching a little bit, we want to talk about how also individuals differ in self-efficacy. So this is another individual difference, but moving a little bit away from personality. Individual beliefs concerning their ability to perform specific tasks successfully. So self-efficacy is, do you believe you will succeed or do you believe you will fail? Now, again, we also have to take into account whether the person has the knowledge, skills, and abilities to succeed in the task. But assuming that there is the basic skills necessary to overcome a particular hurdle or to take on a various task, self-efficacy is how likely the person is to believe they'll succeed or to believe that they'll fail. So judgments of self-efficacy consist of three main components. So the first is magnitude, the level at which an individual believes he or she can perform. In other words, how successful do they think they can be? What is the bar that they think they would start to have difficulties or fail? So for example, for a salesman on a car lot, how many cars can I sell? That would be the magnitude. If someone thinks that they can sell 10 cars, obviously if we're asking them to sell less, they're going to have high self-efficacy. If we're asking them to sell more than 10 cars, that might start to lower their self-efficacy. Strength is the person's confidence that he or she can perform at that level. How sure am I that I can sell that many cars? So again, using our example, we have a person that feels that they can sell 10 cars, but that can change in strength. We might have one salesman that's like, yeah, I can probably sell 10 cars. Well, how confident are you? Not very. It really does depend on a lot of factors. While we have someone else that might say, yeah, I can sell 10 cars. No, I know I can. I can make sure that happens if I set my mind to it. And finally, generality, the extent to which self-efficacy in one situation or one task extends to situations in other tasks. Can I sell trucks, insurance, vacuum cleaners as well? So some people might have a high magnitude and a high strength, but low generality. In other words, I feel very confident of my abilities in this very specific situation, but that doesn't necessarily mean I would be successful elsewhere. Someone might also have a moderate moderate magnitude and a moderate strength. However, they might generalize it to almost all situations. I'm capable of doing a fair amount at a decent level, and I'm fairly confident in it, but I'm not guaranteed. But I also believe that I can do that in any situation, regardless of the specifics. So you can kind of start to see how self-efficacy, especially when we pair it with some of the other concepts we've talked about in this class, for example, self-fulfilling prophecy, where someone who is given support and the belief that they'll do well tends to do better. So someone with higher self-efficacy typically also performs better because they believe they can perform better. So this is another trait that we can look at, especially if self-efficacy is highly tied to the successful completion of a task in an organization. So generally, we talk about self-efficacy very specifically and very generally. General self-efficacy is a measure of people's overall belief about their general capacity to perform tasks in everyday life. So generally speaking, do they believe that given the right tools, the right skill, and the right knowledge, that they can succeed? Beliefs about self-efficacy develop through direct experience, feedback from performing similar tasks, and vicarious experience, observing others perform. So we can build up our self-efficacy by actually doing tasks. I've done it before. I know I can do it again. Or through watching others. I've seen others do that task, and I think that it is well within my range of skills and abilities, and therefore I think I could succeed at that task as well. The next trait we want to look at is self-monitoring. And again, individuals differ in this trait as well. And again, there are many things that people individually differ on. We're mainly focused on ones that research has shown have a strong connection to success in workplace settings. So self-monitoring is a personality trait involving the extent to what individuals adapt their behavior to the demands of a specific situation so as to make good impressions on others. In other words, someone that's truly high in self-monitoring tends to be a social chameleon. And again, you can kind of think about this. You probably know people, and in fact, think about your own behaviors. Some people tend to be the same no matter what situation you put them in. They don't change how they behave based on the situation. They're very consistent. They would actually be fairly low in self-monitoring. Either A, they're not aware of their own behaviors enough to be able to change those behaviors, or they've decided that they don't want to change those behaviors. Many of us probably fall into some moderate level of self-monitoring. I know how I present when I'm with my friends versus how I present when I'm close friends versus how I present when I'm with various social groups versus how I present when I'm lecturing in a class. Those are all slightly different. The modes of communication that I use, the words that I use, I am more likely to swear like a sailor when I'm with my close friends, and I make sure to try not to do that when I'm performing professionally. Also, even my style of dress. I tend to dress in button-up shirts and work slacks, basically business casual, whenever I'm representing my organization or the university. However, typically, I'm usually in Hawaiian shirts and jeans with cowboy boots in most other situations, usually often riding one of my horses. This would be a good example, again, of being aware of my self-monitoring. If I was not self-monitoring, I would always be in Hawaiian shirts, I would always use curse words, and I would always be wearing cowboy boots no matter what the situation was. So the consequences of self-monitoring include work performance. High self-monitors tend to do better than low self-monitors in jobs requiring boundary-spanning activities. So if your job requires you to work with others and to meet their expectations, generally we will find high self-monitors are better at those kind of work jobs. Career success. High self-monitors tend to obtain more promotions than low self-monitors. Again, they're adjusting themselves to the expectations of others. They're following along and adjusting how they behave based on the expectations of their organizations, and therefore we would expect to see them be more successful in their careers. High self-monitors also tend to form less stable and shallower personal relationships with others than low self-monitors. So here's the downside, those interpersonal relationships. The more you're worried about self-monitoring, you're also kind of controlling what you allow to be shared with others. I have friends that are very high self-monitors, and I often refer to them as informational black holes. They're great to be around. They're definitely going to talk to you, but you never learn anything about them. You never really get in past that mask that they're presenting to the rest of the world. People that are low self-monitors, you know who they are, and they're more than willing to share their thoughts. They're more than willing to be themselves around you. And it's usually easier, assuming that you want to build a stronger relationship, to build one with them. So, a downside of truly high self monitoring is an actual dark personality trait, often referred to as Machiavellianism. And again, I kind of talked about how most modern personality tests include at minimum the big five, but many of them have added additional measures. One of those often is a scale of Machiavellianism. It's a personality trait that involves a willingness to manipulate others for one's own purpose. So, not only are we self monitoring how we present based on the social situation, we've gone one step further, and now we're self-monitoring specifically to get our own way to manipulate others. Machiavellian tactics include neglecting to share important information, claiming to forget to tell you about key meetings and assignments. So again, kind of controlling information to benefit yourself. Finding subtle ways of making others look bad to management, so damning with faint praise. Failing to meet obligations, not holding up their ends of joint projects, therefore causing others to look bad, and also spreading false rumors about other people. All of these are traits of someone that has basically moved beyond standard self-monitoring to an area where it might actually be detrimental for the organization. And that's another thing that I just want to broadly talk about. Whenever we're talking about personality traits, we really want to be talking about not just the individual differences, the person, but also the job or role they're in and how those two things fit together. In all cases, there are positives and negatives to behavior types. There are roles that low self-esteem is actually probably going to be better for. There's roles that low extroversion is going to be better for. There's going to be roles that high extroversion. But also, we want to be careful because when we see people that are truly high or truly low on any of these personality traits, there may be some disadvantages to that as well. So when we talk about, in general, people that are high self-monitors are more successful in their careers, do recognize that success in their career isn't also helping the organization. In other words, are they moderate self-monitors that are basically just presenting themselves well in a way that gets the organizational goals attained? Or are they truly a high self-monitor and have they slipped into Machiavellianism, where they're actively trying to encourage their own growth over and above the goals of the organization? In other words, there's positives and negatives to highs and lows in all individual differences. And as we get to the truly high or truly low scores, we start to wonder and start to need to look for, is it actually still helpful at that point? Unfortunately, like all individual differences, we find those extremely high and extremely low scores are fairly rare in the population. Most people tend to be moderate or somewhere in the spectrum. So another type of theory that looks at individual differences is type A versus type behaviors. So type A behavior patterns is a pattern of behavior involving high levels of competitiveness, time urgency, and irritability. So type A people are very task focused, are very good at getting things done. They're also kind of aggressive. They tend to be competitive. They tend to be very aware of time urgency and time deadlines, but this also results in a certain amount of irritability. Type B behavior patterns is a pattern of behavior characterized by a casual, laid-back style and at peace with themselves, the opposite of type A behavior. Less competitive, less focused on tasks, less focused on time urgency, but generally also probably a little more laid back, a little bit more of a people person. And when we look at behaviors in organizations, one of the things we often think about is that a truly good performer or leader tends to be focused on both the social aspect, their interactions with others, and the task aspect, getting things done. So type A behavior pattern is an over focus on the tasks of the job, and type B behavior can be an over focus on the social aspects of the job. But again, this is a reliable measure. It is a construct that's often measured in organizations, and it does give us some information about, again, that person versus job fit. So let's take a deeper look at the end of this module on type A and type B personalities. On task performance, type A's tend to excel on tasks involving time pressure and solitary work. So a type A person is a very good fit for a job that requires a lot of time pressure and a lot of solitary work. Type Bs have the advantage when it comes to tasks involving complex judgments and accuracy as opposed to speed. So if you're wanting, basically a type A personality will get things done good enough, quick enough. A type B personality, when given time and given complex judgments, tends to make better decisions as long as they're not being pressured. So interpersonal relationships, type A's tend to annoy coworkers and are more likely to lose their tempers and lash out at others, especially under stress. And again, they operate best in stressful situations. They're also more likely to become involved in conflict, more likely to share their opinions, and are more likely to engage in aggressive or counterproductive behavior. And in this case, counterproductive behavior is specifically referring to behavior that is against the organization's goals. Again, a type B personality is basically the opposite. They're less likely to lose their temper, they're more likely to think of the feelings of others, they're less likely to be involved in conflict, and they're less likely to be engaged in aggressive or counterproductive behaviors. Again, these are two types of personalities, and both of them have advantages and disadvantages, and both of them have good fits and bad fits for different roles. So hopefully this gave you another kind of view and a deeper view of the various different individual differences that we tend to look at when we're trying to predict workplace behavior. And as always, I encourage you to share any questions that you might have on this lecture on the discussion board on Canvas, and I will see you in the next module.